Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. So welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined by Kate Hall, aka Ethically Kate, once more on this podcast. Thank you so much, Kate, for being here.
It's like full circles.
Yeah.
We're back in, kind of similar, same building, hundreds of episodes later. Here we are.
Yeah.
Still kicking it. Still talking about sustainability stuff. So
I know.
Yeah.
It's I think that a lot of times, and this is one of the things that I've seen, is that when I look back, and it's like, it's been years, and it's been, just with the podcast as well, like, literally, like, you were the first guest on this show, and it was like 2020, I'd like to say, or end of 2019.
Yeah, probably.
So it's like, it's been quite a long time, and I'm really happy that, that we are both alive, and that we are both, we are both here, and still, like, even if slightly things shift because we keep on evolving and we keep on growing, how we actually are staying on purpose. And I think that that's something that is one of the things that I wanted to explore during this conversation is, like, a little bit on that. But just before we get into it, for everybody that perhaps didn't listen to that first episode, just to reintroduce yourself, what can you share about you?
Totally. So, I am Kate Hall, but probably more of the country, especially since 2020, knows me as Ethically Kate now, which was really cool. I never set out to be Ethically Kate or do this as my main job and even employing other people and to be my main hobby, my job, my life. It's just, incredible and quite good to actually sit with you and think back and reflect. But what do? It's hard when people say, what do you do for work? I wish I was an accountant or a lawyer, just a real simple word. But generally, depending on usually the age of the person, because, if my grandmother's friend asked me, I'd just say I'm a writer because I do a lot of writing. But essentially, I'm a sustainability educator. I'm an inspirer, Instagram influencer, a writer, columnist for places like The Herald, News Talk ZB sustainability expert. I'm now an author. And anywhere I can go that inspires people to live and think sustainably, I go.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love, I heard the first time that you were sharing the word I'm a social media inspirer. And I thought, like, how much nicer to say that than to say I'm an influencer. Yeah,
it is funny sometimes when people, I was at a friend's birthday party and meeting some new people and they say, what do you do? I kind of explain without using the word influencer because there's so many connotations that come with that I'm just not, it doesn't describe what I do, so I don't want to mislead them, but I kind of talk about it and then they kind of pick up and they're like, so you're an influencer? And I'm like, well, yeah, but like the good kind. Like I influence good habits and not buying the things, but buying good stuff, and explain it that way rather than just jumping straight to that, which is hard. Like I think over the last few years, like perhaps even when we talked, I was really claiming that word Instagram inspirer and doing it differently. But to be honest, now I've become quite passionate about a sustainable influencing space. And I, do different consults, I have different sessions with people to help them be a better influencer, to actually, that is a career, a content creator. It is a solid, viable career in New Zealand as that industry grows. And so, I've become quite passionate about making that space legitimate and actually not just, I think a lot of people, especially at the start there, before I was kind of legitimized as an author and in different places and they started taking me seriously, were like, you just post things on Instagram and your husband must support you financially, which is totally not the case. So I'm currently the sole income earner in my duo, the unit, and so I think I'm kind of reclaiming that word influencer and actually trying to change the negative connotations around it.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And a lot of times, I think that this is one of the things in a lot of the spaces that I move as well, that it's the mainstream way of doing things perhaps is a little bit tainted, and therefore it's like, well, do we need to create something different, or do we, in a sense, work within that space to create the change, as you're saying? Like a lot of people think, if I think of like social media influencer, like I think of someone that works with any brand. It doesn't matter, as long as they're being paid.
And every day they're unboxing something new, and they've got hordes of different. Exactly.
And and I think that to just change the narrative of that as well is really helpful to to turn around what that means, and I think that's pretty cool. But tell me a little bit about this. So you wrote this book. I don't know when you started writing it, but I don't recall it being part of our conversation on the first podcast.
No, it wouldn't have been. I wrote it during the 2021 lockdown. End of 2021, and then it came out about a year later.
And so share a little bit, like, how do you feel like once you got both the book done and then once you actually receive it?
Yeah, so writing it was it's interesting because I wrote it during the lockdown, so when people hear that, they say, oh, what a great time to write a book. For me though, it's all about being bold and different, and for me, I'm energized from spending time with people. So put me in a room with a laptop for 3 months and tell me to write a book whilst not getting that energy absorption from social time, and it was actually quite hard. So technically, sure, I have more time, but I don't have, how do you write a book about living differently when you feel like you're not actually living? You're not doing normal life. But I did it. And it was, I think, to be honest, like the publisher approached me probably in May 2021 and, have you thought about writing a book? And kind of went back and forth with ideas, and it was quite clear to me from the beginning what that book would be. It was like I already had a book in me and I just had to get it out there. I wasn't necessarily having to think up new stuff, and it was so rewarding to write more long form, to put it together visually, to make it, again, I want multi-purpose things. It's I think a work of art that is actually quite beautiful on someone's coffee table and is accessible. It's got bigger print, there's photos, there's different ways to connect with it and just open it to one page and spend some time with one page. So crafting it and doing that was so rewarding, because I'm used to just writing little Instagram captions or even columns and stuff, max kind of 1,000 words. This I think was like 35 or 40,000 words. So that was really rewarding to see everything in one place. And even now I look at it, that this is Kate maybe even more than that, because again, it came out 2 years ago, but and even obviously we change as humans over time. So I tried to make it in a way, it hasn't aged, it's still totally relevant, all the messages there, but even just I shared really personally about my life and what I was doing at the time. Even all the photos, were relevant there. And I've changed so much as a person since that. It's also, selfishly, it's a lovely little time capsule of all I believed in and all I thought and all, my life, even the pictures of me in my home, it was at that time. And I think when I, look back at it, when I'm, 50 or 60, it would just be such a treasure to reflect on that. I'll probably even now I laugh at some of the things I've put in and things I would have added and changed, but I remember holding it for the first time, to go back to a question of how did it feel. It was an incredible feeling to I'm very tangible. Like I'm always quite surprised that so much of my work is online. And so to hold it and to smell it and to feel it and flip the pages and, you know, the texture of the font on the front, all of that, yeah, it was just so rewarding to feel like, this is it. It's not, you're not just scrolling through a blog post or something. And, you know, this is, it was very rewarding. Very grateful to all the people who helped me put it together, photographers and designers and stuff too.
And I remember, you know, when it came out that you did the launch and, you know, and I think that one of the things that I always really liked about your approach is the making things fun and making things accessible, because a lot of times in the spaces that, you know, sustainability, ethical practices, you know, all of this,
it's heavy stuff.
And a lot of people, you know, bring also that demeanor into the spaces. It's not, you know, it's not if we are having fun, it doesn't make it less serious than what it is.
Yes.
Yet it can be more accessible because it's not that heavy when we are experiencing it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, like I remember, you know, all of the photos that we took and all of the different dresses.
Did you get a massage? I had a massage.
I did.
Masseuse there on the.
I didn't get on time to that, but you know, like I think that stuff like that it makes so much of a difference, and it's one of the things a lot of times that even with a lot of my students when I'm teaching meditation, you know, it doesn't need to be serious. It is something, you know, that we can do it in that way. We can be completely serious, but we can actually, you know, joke. We can say a lot of different things to enliven a situation that is serious, because our system is not conducive to being well in all areas of life, really. And, you know, we are trying to tip a little bit the scale towards that area, and I think that, you know, a lot of times this seriousness gets across as something that people don't want to engage with.
Oh, yeah, it's not enticing, and not to say that, you know, if you're talking about a big heavy news story that you need to be enticing, but if you're ultimately trying to make change and pull someone into a movement, it can't all be heavy and serious, because, you know, someone might be pulled into that for a second. But who wants to like sit in that space, you know? As humans, we're playful and fun and energetic beings, and you to be fun and playful with it, it's not taking away from the severity of it, you know? You're just, like you said, there's a time and place for that seriousness, but I think, you know, we have such a short life, and what I've noticed, I studied business psychology, and I've just always been fascinated by people, how people work, how people learn, why people do what they do. And so I think I started sharing on Instagram maybe like eight years ago now. And over that time, I've observed thousands, potentially millions of people and how they react to my messages and how they react to other people's messages. Very true. I receive up to 1,000 messages a week of people asking questions, responding to things. So I'm quite tuned into what, you know, psychologically gets through to people, and how can we get people to act. But also, you know, my book isn't called Sustainable Living, you know, inspiration for sustainable living is the subtitle, but better, bolder, different. To pull someone in and say, you should do this for the environment. It's like, okay, so who is the environment? What is the environment? You know, tangibly, what's my connection? It's, you know, save the world. It's like, what? How can one person connect themselves to that? But when you're saying, hey, sustainable living is actually better for you, better for the planet, better for other people that you care about, you know, living life different and bolder, it's actually, my take on things. A lot of people come to sustainable living from a particular direction. You know, they may be a surfer and be upset with the ocean plastic. For me, it's a people thing. You know, absolutely I care about the environment very, very much. But for me, I come to it from a people side of things, the social element. And so in everything I do, I want to make people feel good. not paralyzed by all the things they can't do within their systems. And that's what I really focus on. Like my 3 values with Ethically Kate are positive, authentic, and sustainable. And so if I am to talk about a topic, I'm rather than going, this happened and it was really, you know, I'll talk about a positive story that happened and therefore how it's relevant to them and what an individual can do in their everyday life. And yeah, people don't stick to sustainable habits if they come to it in a really heavy, dark space. They may start doing it. It's not going to be sustainable, you know, going forward. It's not going to stick. It won't hang around.
And, you know, I see a lot of times, especially at university in the last few years, with a lot of my students that are, you know, like coming out of high school and the weight that they have on their shoulders, the responsibility that they are feeling, that heaviness, you know, it's a lot. And I think that is part of the issue a lot of times, that there's not that much awareness of all of the positive things. And it's not that, like, I tell a lot of times, you know, like, just because I decide not to watch the news doesn't mean that I'm going to be oblivious to the things that are taking place. It's just that I don't want to put my energy, or at least all of my energy, into that space, because that's also not all of reality. Reality is that there's a wide range of experiences, and every single day there's beautiful things, there's positive things, and there's really horrendous things, and there's really negative things. And it's like, why not focus on the positive without escaping realities, which I think that it's part of this. It's like, you know, saying let's just focus on all of the positive in the world, and, you know, like, and not say that anything else is happening. That's not realistic. I think that there's a place to be optimistic, and there's a place of understanding what's possible. And I think that that's a lot of times one of the things that is so important, our potential of imagining something that is actually beautiful, thriving, that works for everyone, and, you know, that both for the earth, the animals, the plants, the trees, the people, like, and all of the differences between that. And it's like, what does that look like? Because if we cannot even imagine that things can be good, it's challenging.
Totally. It's about that hope piece, I think. What I hear what you said, it's if you can't imagine the positive, you know, if you can't take positivity out of a tragedy or hope out of like, I love this book by Emily, I'm going to say her last name wrong, Elders, I think. Hope is a Verb. I love it. I often look back and flick through it. It's very beautiful. She's an illustrator. It's just stunning. And hope is a verb. You know, you're doing these things out of hope, whether, you know, you're ignorant or not. I've actually had those words kind of thrown about to me before, that maybe I'm a bit ignorant, or, you know, maybe I'm a bit naive. And to those I say, I think when people say that, they're coming, you know, from that negative space of holding on to all those things, and sure, like, if I find out one day that actually having a sustainable lifestyle and trying your best to all this stuff doesn't actually help anyone or anything, which that would be quite a surprise. If I found that out, I would still live this way, though. You know, like maybe being a bit naive or ignorant to everything. Maybe that is what we need to do a little bit more of. Yeah. Because we're also not equipped or evolved as humans to understand and know everything that is going on in the entire globe. Yeah. And to feel empathy and compassion and action towards all of it, you know? So to really focus on what you can do within your community, within your space, your capacity, your financial, social, work, you know, kind of boundaries to do, what you can do.
Yeah. And, you know, with that, I do believe that I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant of so much stuff. And
we all are, right? We can't know it all.
There's no way. Even of the things that we know, we're ignorant of totally. Some scale, as you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I think that actually opens us up to learning and to grow and to explore more. Because if I think that I know, then that's it. There's no more expansion from there.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more change because this is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that's the way that most of us operate in society. And when we're able to actually embrace, like, I don't know other things, I'm going to go and find out for myself, by myself, as you're saying, what's under the sphere of influence that I have in my life, which is me, with all of the things that I'm bringing into the space, the people around me, because I think that's the thing, that think global, act local makes so much sense because, we are here. And someone on the other side of the world, like, yeah, perhaps they listen to the podcast potentially, but most people are not. So therefore, there's nothing that I can do about them other than live my life and live in a way that feels fulfilling and that feels meaningful for me at this moment, and to do that, as much as possible with the people around me so that I can inspire others to be themselves. And I think that this is one of the things that from the book and as well from your work, that it's not you have to be this way, is be your own self.
Yes.
Figure out what you care about, figure out how things look for you, figure out what's under your space, because we are all in different circumstances.
Yeah.
Like, I acknowledge a lot of times my privilege of being a dude. I'm a man in this world. I'm educated. I have a roof on top of my head. I have work. I have friends. I have family. Like, there's so much that I acknowledge on my privilege, and at the same time, I'm doing something with that, because that's where I stand. So it's like, okay, this is where I'm standing. What can I do with that? And I remember, going back to that hope part. I remember 2 years ago, I was invited to speak at this climate conference, and I asked everyone to, visualize a world in the future, and to then tell me how that looks like. And except one person, almost everybody else that mentioned something started to mention what they didn't want. So they were like, no more fossil fuels, no more this, no more that. So I had to stop, and I said, okay, now let's not focus on the what not. Let's focus on the what yes. And then let's figure out how do we get there. But if we don't have a vision for that future, that it's possible, for a thriving earth, thriving humans, living from, the land in terms of the food growing organically and not all things, our clothes, like all of the things that we know of, if we don't have a potential of visualizing that, it makes it harder because there's no direction. It's just more defeated.
Totally. You go like, what's the point? What are we working towards? Like, what's going to happen? Go back to your point also on the always learning, always knowing things. Over the last 8 years of sharing. So I just started this stuff because I wanted to know more, and I was learning and I couldn't shut up. And so I took to Instagram and was taking great brands, asking questions about their clothes, started with fashion, merged into everything else in life. And nowadays, because I'm so much more known within New Zealand and in different contexts, people will use the word expert. They say like, sustainability expert Kate is coming up. And I feel so allergic to that word, because I started Ethically Kate as just me sharing what I'm learning and hoping other people can come along and teach me and learn with me and be part of it. And that still is today what it is. Sure, I probably know a lot more than the average person. But I feel like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. And yeah, it's a really kind of vulnerable, scary position sometimes to have done this for so long, to have a great name within New Zealand as a sustainability kind of influencer and educator, but really to sometimes feel a bit like an imposter in this space, because I'm still just learning. There's so much to learn about. I'm not just doing fashion anymore like I started out. It's every element of life, so I find that quite hard, especially at kind of the point of where Ethically Kate is as a business and me as a person. To struggle with who am I? Should I go back and study? And so the word expert actually becomes a bit more valid, or what would I study? But to actually just go, no, like, you're doing what you want to do. If people use that word or whatever, they can think whatever they want. I'm still to this day passionate about inspiring individuals to the better, bolder, different. Use the name of the book. Life. And I think more and more as time goes on, I'm less about plastic-free pantry, and not that I was ever fully about that because I don't believe in 100%, but more and more about look after yourselves and how you're sustaining yourself, and actually more and more acknowledging that needs to come first. When you're sick or your mental health is lower, how can you live a different life to this mainstream kind of setup that we have? You go get your groceries the same that everyone else has, that you've been marketed to. It's hard. So I think especially at the moment, with everyone in all spheres seemingly struggling in some sort of way, talking about, hey, this is how you do say go to the bulk bin store, it just feels a bit irrelevant to like actually the basis of how we need to be looking after each other and connecting. And that's obviously still great to go to the bulk bin store, and I always advocate for that, but I really have leaned more into the sustainability in a holistic sense. Sustainability doesn't mean environmentalism, as you know. It means something that can continue over and over again. And what I see as well in these 8 years, right? Like, I have a list of all the brands I've ever had touch points with, worked with, done something with, and so many of them are closed down. And all the influencers and bloggers and educators, a lot of them now have, quote unquote normal jobs and had to leave. So it's, how are we sustaining ourselves? We're still here at this podcast, many podcasts later, but how can we be here in another 4 or 5 years without actually burning ourselves out?
And I think that for the ones that have been following my work, there's like a few years ago, especially like since 2019, I decided more consciously to work more on the well-being part of that and the mental health part of things. And I still, as you're saying, I still live my life as conscious as I can. I still show by living my life in the way that I'm living, and I'm showing what's possible. And all of the episodes of the podcast, all of the events that I've already done, like, it's not that suddenly I don't care about those things. It's that, as you're saying, I started to understand more that the how-tos on all of the sustainability things were important, and more important than that, people having the capacity to even get to that place, or an understanding of why to do that, or understanding that my values actually align with that, and then therefore what kind of actions I can take to align my actions with my values. And I think that this is part of the the process, that as we keep on being authentic to who we are, is how do we share, and where are people, and what do we think that's important? Because I might in a couple of years go back to sharing more around that space, and I don't know. It's about understanding at each moment, like, how do I keep on doing the things that make me stay alive, and and feel like I'm living life, and energizes me, and for me, that's sharing a lot of these different things of being different and being ourselves, understanding, how can we lean more on that, even if there's a lot of challenges, even if there's a lot of things that are taking place, because that will never stop. There's always something happening.
Always.
And I think that this is one of the things a lot of times, going back to what you were saying about the expert thing, I actually so last year I went through a rebrand on my personal brand. And one of the things with the people that I was working with, I needed, external eyes. And they were like, you're the expert. And I'm like, I understand what you mean. I also have, as you're saying, this thing of I'm still learning all of these things, and I keep on learning. And at the same time, I understand that from a public perspective, or for businesses that might hire me to go and work with them, positioning myself in the space, or even if others are positioning me as an expert or a leader in the well-being space, then that actually has an impact on who's going to listen to me. Totally. And this is part of the psychology. It's like, when I started telling people that I actually, for the last 5 years, I've been teaching at the university, suddenly they listen to me differently than what they were, before. And it's like, I'm still the same person, I'm still saying the same things, but now because there's this credibility piece that is there that some people care about, then suddenly they can listen to me. And I think that this is, an interesting thing of just understanding who are we talking to, and understanding how do we get the message across, regardless of, sometimes not regardless, but, and at the same time, how it feels for us.
Definitely.
There's, and I think that the self-sabotage in there, it's important, but, you just mentioned something in terms of, a lot of influencers going to find jobs or regular jobs, let's call it. I have seen this in a lot of spaces that there's a lot of trends a lot of times, and people, jump onto them without establishing, what happens if this changes? So you were, at the beginning, social media, Instagram, and then you started to pivot a little bit, not fully, you're still doing that. How to make it more sustainable for you? What was that, and for anybody, potentially listening that is thinking on, okay, I either work as a semi-influencer, as an influencer, or I might think about doing that. What would be some of your learnings in terms of that, or your suggestions?
I think when I realized, ethically Kate it's a thing. It's something that could be my full-time job one day, something I'm really passionate about. It's really lacking in New Zealand. Still are so many bloggers and sustainable influencers in the UK and US, but they're recommending all these irrelevant brands to us. And just also communicating in such a different way, it's different culturally to how we communicate and absorb messages in New Zealand. So when I did realize that, I realized a few things. I'm not a social media person. I only took to social media because I had that purpose. And I didn't want to spend my whole life on social media. And what I see in other influencers is when social media is your only job, so when being an Instagram influencer is your sole income and your sole job, it can be really toxic for the individual and for their friends and family. And their content generally goes down, because if you're creating content, you need to be living. If you're a writer writing a book, I need to be a reader. I need to be experiencing life. So I didn't want to go down that route and just be an Instagram influencer, even though to this day that is my main income stream. I knew also I wanted my business to be sustainable, ironically, and that I enjoyed other things. So I think my biggest advice is not to just put all your eggs in one basket, that just because it's going super, super well, are you going to be doing this when you're 40, 50 and still showing up? Not that I think we all have to make decisions now around, are we going to still be doing this when we're 40, 50? That's ridiculous. But I personally always want Ethically Kate to exist, but always in different formats and ways, and to evolve as my life grows, to evolve as the world changes. And so I think I rolled with the things that I enjoyed doing and could make an income from too, because it has to be sustainable financially, right? So doing public speaking, especially in corporate settings, as you know, corporate space, that's great. It means you can do a lot of volunteer work elsewhere. So that's also, I think, where the biggest change happens, because if I am to go into, the offices at Mitre 10 or lawyer's firm or L'Oreal, TVNZ, all places I've gone and spoken to get those people thinking sustainably, that's huge impact, huge. These are big key decision makers who can actually use that knowledge and passion and inspiration that I've hopefully given to them by the end of the session to make some really good change in their businesses. So that also fuels me. I think I've decided that's my specialty, that's my kind of unique offering, and also what I'm best at is talking to people who don't care yet and actually not just preaching to the choir. I could have, if I naturally let myself just continuing down the rabbit hole, I potentially would be at a tiny home in the middle of nowhere and just live like that. But I don't think I could last that way, actually, because I'm too much of a people person. I'd probably take a bunch of friends with me. Anyway, maybe one day. But I think I realised my purpose to get where I want to, I need to stay in the mainstream. And I've kind of, don't know if you've noticed, but I've kind of tried to make myself more of, hey, I'm an influencer, but here's some sustainability stuff. So, if you can't beat them, join them. And actually, so it's a lot of different ramblings, but going back to if you are, I love to create content, 'cause it is such a fun art form. Creating photos, reels. I think reels was made for me, to be honest. I think I've been making reels before reels existed on Instagram, so very grateful for that, because I know a lot of people don't feel that way about reels. But if you were to look back growing up, I would dance and put on shows at all my family gatherings, at all my school camps, and here I am dancing, putting on shows, talking about these brands I absolutely adore for my living. And I just, the privilege and honor of it all is not lost on me. Every day I'm just like, what? What is this? Which is great, but it is important to be strategic and think, okay, just because all this great work is coming in, you may just need to cap that and focus on the other things that may be slower to grow and rise, but actually need to sustain you. Even in the last few months, I've had the least kind of content creation gigs in several years. Marketing budgets are much lower. I already work with tiny, small, sustainable brands anyway, so budget's always tight. But to go, actually I still have public speaking gigs. I still have Patreon. That's been awesome. Not only financially, there's incredible people online support me, but I also get to just write ramblings and be totally free about what I talk about. Literally completely free. I write it like my diary. So that's just incredible. So diversifying is so important, not only for financial sustainability, but personal sustainability. So you're not just kind of living in a little screen and box. You have to also make sure your life is bigger offline than it is online. There's so many things that the internet doesn't know about me and doesn't know have happened that I've done, and people go, oh my gosh, when I'm telling them in person, I didn't know that. I don't share everything I know I share a lot, but I don't share everything online. And people get a surprise sometimes when I tell them things. And I think that's just the most important, is to your offline world to be just so much bigger than your online, to keep some things for yourself. And to spending time with my family that's my life force, that's my kind of cup filling space.
And going back to the very beginning of our conversation around purpose, I think that one of the biggest things for me through the last 15 years really that the topic of impermanence has been, and death has been a practice as a reminder of living life fully, living life on purpose, living life, and on purpose I mean like intentionally, not just like, this is my purpose, I'm going to be doing this. It's like, as you're saying, like, what is that thing that makes you feel alive? I'm figuring out what is it that is your own gift that you're bringing, because who would have thought, I wouldn't have thought that, someone dancing and making this, like,
me neither.
these dances with their husband, like, are going to inspire people to live more consciously. It's like, but that is, as you're saying, you used to dance and you love doing all of this, so that is at the moment how you are, allowing yourself to show up in this world, and as you're saying, business-wise with strategy and everything a little bit. But if everything is, too heavy, if there's no fun, if there's no understanding on those things of like, I'm living my life on purpose. I don't know every single day exactly what I'm going to do or how I'm going to feel or what's going to happen, yet I'm doing my best every single day.
Yes, and I think it's important to note too, because we've talked a lot about joy and positivity, and my page is joy and positivity, but especially in the last year, I've made sure I share about all the life's challenges, because I think it is also hard. I know I share authentically, that's one of my key values, and I try to share that, but when you are the ethically Kate, the positive dancing chick, and then like crap happens to you and you don't want to dance and you don't want to show up, and I nearly quit Ethically Kate in the middle of this year. I like genuinely was just about done. And I chose obviously to continue. I'm here, I'm good, in a different space. But I think it's so important. It's hard when joy is your brand to then be like off brand and be like, actually, I nearly quit Ethically Kate and life sucks and does it really matter, But that no one can stay in a state of joy and positive and happiness and purpose and all this stuff all the time. So that's been really freeing and rewarding to share that way, because every time I do share that way, I mean, I'm sure there's some people who go, oh, she made me feel, bad, and usually she makes me feel great with her videos. Well, everyone's reaction is their responsibility, but the amount of people who find they can actually feel they can get more from all of my content when they know that I'm a human who deals with that. And so, I think just getting over my own hurdle of, but I always want to make people feel good. And if I share about my challenges and losses and all this stuff, they're going to be like, oh, they're not going to feel as good. But actually go, no, this is me, this is honest, and it's more important for people to know the whole picture.
Yeah. And I think that, as you say a lot of times, it's not about being perfect. And it's, even with this, even with, showcasing that, yes, there are challenges in life, and yes, we go through stuff, or yes, we perhaps now learned something to actually manage or be with something that is challenging that in the past we didn't. And I have noticed this for myself as well, that for many years I didn't share much about my story, my experiences, and it was more now. And I started to realize, like, a lot of people need to actually connect with me through understanding I used to be really stressed out. I used to actually have road rage. I used to be super shy. I used to have all of these different things that now, fortunately, I unlearned, or I learned different ways of being with them. That's part of me as well. And I think that that's a lot of times important to get out of that space of perfection, even in the eyes of others.
Yes.
And I think that that's, like a lot of times really, really important. Okay, just one last few things, just so that I can honor our time here together. What are some of the main things that, someone doesn't, this is the beginning, they are not aware anything about any of the topics that you talk about. Where would you start?
I often recommend two main things. firstly, start by simply asking someone, having intentional conversations with people about how they live and the mundane things in their life. And I would hope those people would potentially be an older generation to you. There's just so much power in sitting down and asking, one of my greatest memories with my grandparents in their last few years of living was doing an interview with them about sustainable living. And, I said, how did you get your groceries? How did, and a lot of the things I do now in my sustainable lifestyle, they did back then. And you're opening up a conversation, with your neighbor, with a friend. How do you do your groceries? What kind of pushes your purchasing decisions? How do you do that? Or going to a friend's house. I went to a friend's house the other day, new friend, and she had reusable toilet paper, and I wanted to know, all about it and how they do it. So I think the first thing, it's not to go out and buy something ethical or to change something radical, though the second thing I'm going to ask people to do is can be radical, is to just talk about it, to talk and learn, and maybe actually having conversations isn't practical for you. Maybe listening to podcasts or watching documentaries, however you prefer to absorb information. Do that. Start by learning and understanding your why before you do anything that will probably waste your money or not actually sustain itself. So just be inquisitive and have chats. And secondly, compost. Composting, a lot of people turn their nose up at. But nowadays we have composting solutions for whatever home situation you're in. Apartments, suburban life with 6 children, flatting. There are solutions. I've seen all of those situations. There are composting solutions. So I say composting not only because generally about half a person's rubbish bin is organic matter, but also it's a huge waste and environmental travesty if that organic matter is wasted in landfill. So you're not only reducing your waste, but you also, it's the key part is diverting it and turning it into great luscious soil. And the process of composting, you learn so much, and that kickstarts people on their journey. When you start to learn, oh my gosh, all my scraps and waste turn into luscious soil that I'm able to give to my neighbours or use on my garden and not pay money for. It's a circular, it's a cycle that is replicated in a lot of other sustainable parts of living. And so to learn that in composting, it's huge. Even share waste, where it connects people who have a compost bin with people who can't have a compost bin, that's brilliant too. Start there. You connect with someone locally or down the road, drop your scraps off every week, and you're making another connection, another friend, another worldview that you are exposed to. Yeah, it's just brilliant. So have a conversation with someone and start composting, and you're on your way. You'll end up in a tiny home in the middle of nowhere at any moment.
And I think this is great because this is partly of how we connect. Mm-hmm. This is, and we all connect with things differently, but at the core of everything for me is connection. Mm. Like connection with ourselves, connection with others, connection with our environment, and through sometimes seemingly simple things, we can actually get there, and that can spark something in us. Like I know, as you're saying with compost, like my younger brother, when he was still living back in Argentina, he actually got in compost for his small apartment. Cool. And now he's growing his own veggies, and it's like, I don't think that if he hadn't started composting that he would have ever thought of doing that.
Totally. And it's great for his health, great for his mental well-being out there in the soil, all facets, right? We start doing sustainable living, sometimes to reduce waste or look after the planet, and you go, oh my gosh, this way of living makes me feel so good. It can feel quite selfish sometimes, can't it? Because it feels so great.
Yeah, well, but I think that, what if we all had the life like that? What if we all feel great? Mm-hmm. And then that's what we keep on spreading. So
exactly.
Thank you, Kate, so much for taking the time.
Pleasure to be here. Always good to chat. We could talk for hours and hours, you and I think, Brian.
I know. But hopefully I don't need to wait another 4 years, you know, like to
Sure.
have you on a conversation like this. But yeah, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening. For you know, whatever you are in your path and your journey. If there was something that you hear that during this conversation that inspired you, or something that you're already doing, or if you have a question, send it over. I'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
And see you all next time. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.